I haven't talked to either of you since I think last Thursday. A lot has happened since then. I mean, isn't it crazy to think that free agency just opened about a week and a day ago, and so much has happened in that time? We will start off, though, with Todd Gurley heading to the Atlanta Falcons on a one-year, $5 million contract. The deal is contingent on the 25-year-old eventually passing his physical with the team. Daigle, the Falcons were mentioned as a team that was possibly in to trade for Gurley before he was ultimately released by the Rams. So they obviously think very highly of the running back.
And it's kind of the perfect situation, which has been the odd scenario for a lot of veterans we thought were washed. They just kind of ended up in a great scenario for themselves on an offense. And it's the same for Todd Gurley. Goes now where Freeman, obviously, Devontae Freeman got released, freed up 17.3 touches per game for Todd Gurley to kind of stride right into. And yes, we expect them to grab a running back on day 2, most likely. Cam Akers seems to be the fit right now. But for the time being, a one-year deal, like they have nothing to lose by just outright riding him all year long.
I don't know if we're going to see him ride him, though. I mean, yeah, Devontae commanded a nice little workload, but that was really mostly after. And wow, Ito Smith was getting hurt. I mean, clearly the Brian Hill experiment kind of failed on him, and I think they were just willing to finally give Devontae that 70% plus snap roll that really we just haven't seen in Atlanta going back to the Freeman and Tevin Coleman days. I mean, they've always kind of wanted to use committee backs. If they do lean on Gurley, yeah, you're right. It is a perfect situation. Josh, I don't know how you said he's 25 years old and didn't, hesitate. That's just crazy to me still. And I know everyone's going to have their 25-year-olds with 100-year-old knee jokes. That's fine. Get them out. But the guy looked washed last year. He still scored 14 touchdowns. Let's not forget fantasy football, follow the opportunity, and it might be here in Atlanta.
I really like what the Falcons are doing this offseason. And while they let go of Austin Hooper and then they trade a second-round pick for Hayden Hurst, it's still a situation where they're trying to make a strength stronger, right? Because they've had this good offense and Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley and obviously Matt Ryan, but they're trying to keep it strong because that's where they know that they win on the football field.
They only signed Laquan Treadwell to say they could start 11 first-round picks, right? Because they were 10 out of 11 until they signed him.
This is all dependent on how healthy Todd Gurley is because, yes, you did mention 25 years old, but he's obviously had some major knee issues. And there have been some murmurs and reports that, he's sought help for that knee in multiple different avenues, and really nothing has worked. What fascinated me last year was how much of a decline he had in the passing game because he was a major part of that passing game for the Rams back in 2018. Then 2019, he just looked lost. He looked insignificant there. And, 240-plus touches are on the table. And so if he is healthy, it's a great spot for him.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what Gurley can do playing, with the real QB for the first time in his career. It'll be a decent upgrade there under center. I'm not sure if we'll see him kind of get the targets. There's, with Hurst there now, Ridley, Julio, there's plenty of guys in the passing game that will compete for targets. But we've seen Gurley do it before. Like you said, if he's healthy, maybe he can do it again. But, again, 14 touchdowns last year, and all we could talk about all season was how washed he was. So if the opportunity's there, I think it'll be a high enough scoring offense for him to kind of get that touchdown equity once again.
And so much running production is tied to run blocking success, and obviously the Falcons had a really, really bad blocking offensive line last year, so hopefully that changes this year. All right, moving on to another running back. Melvin Gordon to the Denver Broncos on a 2-year, $16 million contract with $13.5 million guaranteed. Hopefully you can hear the trains in front of me because I am super thrilled about this landing spot for the person that is Melvin Gordon III, the talent that is Melvin Gordon III. It's clear that John Elway wanted to have a lead back over Phillip Lindsay. The team drafted Royce Freeman in the same year that they acquired Phillip Lindsay as an undrafted free agent. Daigle, Melvin Gordon, I would say, is the odds-on favorite to lead the team in touches, but certainly will have more of a split backfield than one feature back.
You said you were thrilled. Why are you thrilled about this landing spot?
Because I think Melvin is still a really good running back. I think that last year, it's different than Gurley, right? Because I think we've seen with our eyes how much Todd Gurley, the talent has declined. I'm not sure if Melvin Gordon, the talent has declined. I think that obviously it wasn't a productive 2019, but so many factors went into that, including just skipping off-season workouts and going into a situation where he was kind of the second best back. So they obviously want him here in Denver, and to me, that makes sense for him to be the lead ball carrier in that scenario.
And they did already say he's the 1A ahead of Phillip Lindsay.
Yeah.
My initial reaction wasn't even about Melvin Gordon. I think I'm just upset at how bad John Elway runs a team, even though I know he's a big fan of the Rotoworld podcast, so I'm sorry. Because you have Royce Freeman still on a rookie deal. And yes,
he's not good.
No, it's still too early to say that. Like, is there a giant difference between Melvin Gordon and Royce Freeman? Yes. No, I agree. But again, a running back on a rookie contract, you just take that if you're going to have a 1A and 1B option. I don't know why you're wasting money on Melvin Gordon.
Yeah, I was hoping that they would get Drew Lock another weapon that wasn't just a running back. I understand Gordon does bring more pass down ability than either Lindsey or Freeman to the table, but I don't think anyone looked at the Broncos and were like, wow, they're just a running back away from, really competing here. We'll see if they address wide receiver in the draft. They better, but I'm still waiting to see where Robbie Anderson goes because I'm looking at that offense. And I think what they need is kind of more of a field stretcher to help open things up for the run game, for Cortland Sutton, for everyone else that's kind of working those underneath areas of the field. I know Sutton can go deep and all that too, but I just don't – I mean, it's fine. Melvin Gordon, he's a good running back, maybe even very good, and he'll be that wherever he goes. But now he's in a situation where we know Lindsey's going to be involved. It's not going to be a 3-down role by any stretch of the imagination. And, again, I just think there are bigger needs in Denver than a running back.
I hope I'm wrong on this offense because I like watching Cortland Sutton and Tim Patrick and Noah Fant and all these talented young players they have in this offense.
You can't just slide Tim Patrick in there and act like
Tim Patrick's young and good as well. But, like, I don't know, the 5 games we got out of Drew Lock, what leads me to believe, and it's only 5 games I know, but nothing led me to believe that we're going to be watching anything special.
I mean, I understand it from like a fantasy lens where we might not be thrilled with this because obviously it's a competing workload, but I don't see how adding a Melvin Gordon makes your team worse. It doesn't. It makes it better. And so just from a big picture look, I'm excited for a Broncos team that is better. I'm also excited for John Elway because this is obviously a type of player that he's wanted for quite some time. Like you go back to the Royce Freeman draft and it's clear he wants a bigger back who can succeed in the ways bigger backs do. And Melvin Gordon does that. I think Philip Lindsay's a very good talent. He's obviously outperformed any expectations anyone ever placed on him. But when teams have a vision for how they want a position to be and fit on their team, I think it's super evident that Melvin Gordon is that for the Broncos.
Yeah, I think people in general kind of look at Lindsey because he's smaller as this like scat back type. He just hasn't been that great as a receiver these last 2 seasons. I mean, he couldn't even beat out Devontae Booker consistently. So, yes, it makes their offense better for sure. And you know what? Like when you have – I'm not sure how much they're paying Flacco, so excuse me on that a little bit. But when you do have a rookie quarterback, sign whoever you can to help make the offense better.
All right, moving on. The New Orleans Saints have added Emmanuel Sanders on a 2-year, $16 million contract. Last year, Sanders had just 2 100-yard games over that, I should say, with the 49ers. He's 33 years old. But last year, Ian, the Saints added Jared Cook to go with Michael Thomas prior to the 2019 season. And now prior to the 2020 season, you had Sanders to go along with Cook. And Thomas, again, this goes back to making a strength even stronger. Again, I absolutely love this move.
Yeah, and look what's happened in the 2 playoff games that the Saints have lost in. Michael Thomas pretty much had the entire secondary focus on him, and he just wasn't our usual Michael Thomas production. 436-0 against the Rams, 7 catches for 70 yards against that pretty bad Vikings secondary last year. I mean, we've seen defenses, they focus everyone on Michael Thomas, and then hopefully Alvin Kamara can make enough happen underneath. But that's been the problem. They added Jared Cook last year. That was huge. Now adding Emmanuel Sanders, gigantic. I mean, we have seen Breeze, force the ball to Traquan Smith and Ted Ginn in way too high of leverage situations over the years. Now we have a guy who was a better deep ball away from being the Super Bowl hero. So, I mean, played 17 games last year following that brutal Achilles injury. Averaged 9 yards per target. I mean, that was his highest since 2014. Sure, the Shanahan scheme probably helped matters with that, but going to Sean Payton and Drew Brees is just about the best, alternate location you could ask for.
I went from being completely out on Emmanuel Sanders altogether to just the one landing spot he could have gone that actually needed his presence in the slot. And it's the perfect fit. And thinking back on it, remember, we've talked about this. Opened up with the Niners a 2-game stretch where he had over 100 yards. He scored 2 touchdowns and then had that ribs injury. But then you think about it, and it was kind of unreasonable to think he could play effectively for that long anyhow, because not only did he play a full season, less than 1 year removed from an ACL tear, and then not only did he play more than a full season because he got traded, so he played 17 games, he also went on to play 20 games all year long off of a ACL tear in November. So now to just be added to the slot, it actually – I wonder how they're going to integrate him and Jared Cook together, because Cook played the third highest slot rate among all tight ends last year, scored 5 touchdowns from the middle of the field. So it is another presence, but it's going to be curious how they integrate all three, including Michael Thomas, into this offense. But either way, a terrific, terrific fit.
And how dare I forget Taysom Hill's name in that group of playmakers?
Red zone threat, of course.
How dare I forget the number one playmaker in the playoffs for the New Orleans Saints? I think we're all excited about Emmanuel Sanders. And still, I mean, for a player who, we forget, came off an Achilles injury in just like a 6 to 8 month span of time, to do what he did last year with the 49ers, and while it wasn't super uber productive, I would even say that maybe in a team that was worse, he would have gotten more opportunity than he did with the 49ers. So he might be that missing piece of what the Saints have been missing on offense the last couple of years. All right, moving on. Brian Hoyer to the New England Patriots.
Is that why the train is sounding for Brian Hoyer?
Yeah, that's yeah. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Maybe in Brian Hoyer's case, it's a good thing. He signed a 1-year, $2 million contract, and Hoyer's agent said he will compete to start. Ian Hartitz, do you buy that?
Are they tanking for Trevor Lawrence already? I mean, no.
Yes.
Maybe. I guess he is. It's weird to say, but at the same time, like this Patriots team, even last year, and Brady himself said it's a team built on defense and special teams, and there's not a quarterback available right now that I think would really change that. Josh, I know, Brady so good at making the right decisions, not turning the ball over. I've heard you give the spiel before. I don't disagree with it. With that said, the Patriots allowed 14 or fewer points in 11 games last season. You cannot tell me if Brian Hoyer, if he was the Patriots quarterback last year, they win at least 8 games.
They don't, Ian. Ian, stop this.
You don't think Brian Hoyer could score 17 points a game?
No. I don't understand your infatuation with thinking that Brian Hoyer, there's not that much of a difference, a 4-game difference between Tom Brady and Brian Hoyer. There's a drastic difference.
When you have the league's single best coach at game planning that once had Jacoby Brissett throw like 6 passes in a blowout win over the Texans, and also easily the league's best defense, you don't need a good quarterback under center to be 500.
The last time we saw Brian Hoyer, he was absolutely atrocious.
Yeah, I can't stop thinking about him hosting Miami and just completing 46% of his passes and being atrocious.
Yeah. From the Patriots' view, though, and how they're going to handle this position, because to me, that's like the biggest storyline as we enter the rest of this offseason, maybe the 2020 season altogether, is finally we have Bill Belichick, who's the greatest coach of our lifetime, and how he handles the most important position in the sport is something that we have never truly seen, at least in the last decade and a half. So,
well, Matt Castle.
Yeah, but
it's the exact situation.
Yeah, but that was only going to be a 1-year plan. This isn't just a 1-year plan. It's going to have to be much longer than that, because I don't think that Bill Belichick's going to rush into any drastic decisions. He's not going to panic, at least in the short term. It would not surprise me at all if we enter the 2020 season. It's Jarrett Stidham and Brian Hoyer, maybe a rookie that they add outside the first round, and that's it. And Daigle, I don't know, going back to Ian's point, I don't know how many games you win with that, because as we know, great defenses, at least the historic level that the Patriots played in for the first 10 games of the season, that is not sticky. That is not going to repeat itself. So I don't know how good win-loss-wise the Patriots are going to be next year, but I don't think that Bill's too worried about that necessarily. Obviously, he wants to win, but he also doesn't want to rush into anything that he can't get away with at the quarterback spot.
I will never count Belichick out for fewer than 8 wins. In terms of the situation under center, though, with it looking like OTAs and perhaps even camp, who knows, is going to get canceled, like that's going to factor into who is their quarterback. Yeah. And it's going to be either Stidham or Hoyer. It doesn't even someone like Cam Newton coming over doesn't make sense at all right now.
Ian, I'm going to extend an olive branch to you, because a few XFL quarterbacks signed. The Chiefs signed quarterback Jordan Te'amu, formerly of the XFLs. Let me read this correctly. The St. Louis Battlehawks. That's a 1-year contract Te'amu got. The Panthers signed quarterback P.J. Walker, formerly of the Houston Roughnecks, to a 2-year deal. Ian, give us a quick scouting report on each.
So P.J. Walker, highest flying XFL offense with June Jones down there in Houston, was the number 1 quarterback in all of your counting stats. The one issue was just so much of his game was off script. I mean, it was like PFF has this awesome stat, 2.5 seconds, how they do when throwing. Shorter than that, feasibly, when they get pressured or if they're just throwing kind of in rhythm, or after 2.5 seconds when the play breaks down. Walker, easily number one quarterback after 2.5 seconds, more like 8th or 9th before 2.5 seconds. So wrote an article a couple weeks ago in the Expo, still going on about Phillip Walker's NFL chances. Yeah, he might be a top 60, 70 quarterback on the planet, but I really don't think he has much of a chance unless he can really improve his ability to, play on script and in the flow of an offense to do much. Because, again, it's just I don't think he has the athleticism to do the same type of things he was doing in the XFL against better athletes. And then real quick, Jordan Ta'amu, man, like all we knew about this guy going in was he was the Ole Miss quarterback who couldn't make it work with DK Metcalf and A.J. Brown. Correct. To his credit, he was very accurate. He averaged a nice, yards per attempt in St. Louis. But, man, that was like maybe the most unique offense in the XFL potentially because they were about 10 or 15% more run heavy than any other offense. And the entire game plan was pretty much one RPO after another. I mean, his deep ball rate was Teddy Bridgewater-esque. He was running the ball a lot, throwing quick slants when, the defense allowed him to do so, but just never really saw him work in any type of offense I think we're going to see on Sunday. So I'm excited for both guys. They both run around. We'll roster them in the preseason DFS. That'll be a good time, but I would curb any expectations of people thinking there'll be anything more than number 2 or 3.
You actually know who the Battlehawks running backs are, Josh. You've heard of.
Do I?
You've
Zach
heard
Stacy?
of Matt Jones.
Yes, I have.
And Christian Michael before.
Yeah, I have.
And by the way, both were pretty bad. So.
Well, on Walker's end, Ian, there's a chance he sticks because he goes to the Panthers. Matt Rule is the coach. Matt Rule was his coach, I believe, for 3 or 4 years at Temple. The team.
Those years went though.
Well, the team, as soon as they signed Walker, traded Kyle Allen to the Washington Redskins for a 5th-round selection. So we saw what Will Grier looked like last year. And whenever we see new head coaches and coaching groups come into teams, all of them go and get players they are acquainted with, players that they know very well, and name it the quarterback spot. That's what the Redskins did with Kyle Allen. That's what the Panthers are doing here with Walker. So it wouldn't shock me at all if he's their number 2 quarterback, if he has a good preseason and a better one than Will Grier.
I'm choosing to believe that P.J. Walker showed up, had a quick tryout against Kyle Allen, and they just traded him immediately after the tryout.
Guys, there's still a lot of big-name free agents out there. Robbie Anderson, Jadeveon Clowney, Jameis Winston, Daigle, any of those or any others that I did not mention that you're surprised by or that you might see some connections with out there?
Have we got anything more than a 1-year deal for a receiver outside of Cooper yet?
I don't think so. I think that might be it.
There have been so many 1-year deals for unrestricted free agents, and long-term has been 3 for $30 for everyone.
Yeah. That's when the new money's going to come in, is in 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Call me skeptical, but I think teams are really relying on this rookie wide receiver class. And I've heard all the gushing things about how good they are, but still rookies, and we've seen his position, take longer for guys to develop more so. Maybe Robbie is just asking for way too much money, but for the life of me, I think teams might be relying a little bit too much on this draft class.
I mean, even too much money, though, like if it was 15, which is what was reported initially annually, like he's down to probably 5 to 7 annually now, which is now suddenly making him a bargain.
That's just a guess.
Wow.
I mean, it's a guess, but why hasn't he got even 9 or 10 yet?
Maybe he's asking what Clowney's doing, just outpricing himself. I mean, I don't think we really know.
The Clowney story is an interesting one because prior to the offseason, I considered maybe if teams were going to spend at that spot, they might make him the highest paid defensive player in the league. And that's certainly not going to happen now. And the longer this goes on with Clowney and Robbie Anderson, certainly they'll just return back to their teams unless we have some surprises. And there's still some other quality free agents out there. Okay, a lot has changed in the NFL over the last week. This is a league that loves to lie to us, as we have noted from combine statements to how that changed in just about a month after that. But the NFL has to be honest with us during this free agency window. They have to divulge their plan just a little bit because they have to fill needs, and then other ones have yet to be filled as well. So why don't we do some winners and some losers, alternate with each. Ian, why don't you start off with the winner for us?
First winner I got is the Eagles defense. So we'll start with the one bad thing that happened, and that was losing Malcolm Jenkins. That sucks. There's no way around it. They've been one of the league's top defenses against tight ends, and he's one of those safeties that truly, he can play slot corner when you need him. He can play free safety, strong safety, incredibly versatile. huge get for the Saints. Other than that, though, this was a home run of free agency for the Eagles. Javon Hargrave, we talked about him all, before free agency started, but he was one of the best available interior defenders on that line. He's played in 63 of 64 games over the last 4 years. He's going to be there. PFS number 8 interior defender last season. If he keeps playing at that high level, I mean, the one worry I had for him, and we were talking about him before this, was how's he going to play when he's not surrounded by Hayward, Tua, and Watt. Now he's on an Eagles D-line that does have a comparable amount of talent around him, so love that fit. And then Darius Slay, obviously. I mean, truly, I believe Slay is right there with, Gilmore and Ramsey as one of the league's, if not best, just like he can handle more responsibility than anyone else. And that's, kind of what we've been seeing with the Lions and kind of looking back at that film from last year. Sure, like guys like Keenan Allen had decent games against them, but they're having those decent games with Slay moving to his slot, with no safety help. He's asked to carry crossers all the way around the field, just irresponsible coverage schemes that were put on him because of how good he is. I mean, the Eagles have not been able to slow down number one wide receivers for like the last 3 years at least. Now they finally have a cornerback that can do it, and small sample size, but pretty good history against Amari Cooper.
Can I throw some names at you, Ian, because there are a few more. Jatavis Brown, they added to the linebacker group. I know you're a big fan because he's coming out of Akron. He actually had like some solid years his first couple of years with the Chargers, and then I think there were some coaching changes. Something happened, and he just fell to the bench. But he's an athletic linebacker who can operate behind those behemoths we talked about on the defensive line. And then they still have Malik Jackson, at least still on the roster right now. Malik Jackson was their big defensive free agent signing last offseason and didn't get to play at all because of injury. So adding him as like your rotational piece along with Hargrave and Fletcher Cox, that's frightening. That's frightening. Daigle, anything? No? I am a bit surprised, Ian.
I feel like either my internet's messing up or yours is. I'm not sure what's going on here.
Ian, I am surprised that this Eagles team has not attacked the wide receiver group at all so far, though, because that was the need that we thought they were going to prioritize because Deshaun Jackson's absence was felt incredibly after that one game that he played. Why do you think they haven't sought after any of those free agents so far?
They must be relying on this draft class. Now, we saw didn't exactly help them last year when they kind of had J.J. Arcega-Whiteside who needed to kind of step up and obviously never did. I mean, we've heard the Alshon Jeffrey, trade or release rumblings. We'll see if those kind of pick up again. I know they were kind of existing more pre-combine than recently. But, yeah, that's really the only hole on this team, though. I think otherwise they're super complete. And they need the wide receivers for sure, but I would say less so than maybe other positions just because they have – I don't think any other offense has 2 tight ends this good across the leagues, and they did use that pretty much as their base offense last year. So, fingers crossed, D-Jax and Jeffrey can maybe stay healthy, but I think they're still in a good enough position if they just add a couple higher round picks to the wide receiver position.
The defensive line additions are not ideal for a Cowboys offensive line that just lost Travis Frederick right in the middle. I'll say that.
And with the Eagles, they have gotten rid of Jordan Howard. He's obviously moving on over to the Miami Dolphins. So, Ian, that leaves a very, very clear pathway for Miles Sanders to get maybe 300 touches this season.
Hope so. I mean, again, it's going to depend on the draft. I know, I think it was Matthew Berry. It might have been Matthew Berry. He has that real helpful article after the combine where he kind of talks about what he heard from guys. And I think the indication was they don't want to give Miles this full-fledged 3-down role, but we saw him kind of carry that offense at the end of the season. It might be one of these situations where, no, the guy doesn't get a Christian McCaffrey 99% snap role, but I think, it'd be surprising to see him get anything less than 200 carries and, 75 as targets, which is all we can ask for.
All right, crossing my fingers that Daigle's internet is keeping up with us here. Daigle, why don't you take it away with one of your winners?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yep, you're good.
I made a live switch. We made an executive decision really quick. Okay, so fingers crossed this works, and I'm going to move forward with Kyler Murray as one of my winners. In his rookie year, with Christian Kirk in and out of the lineup, Kyler Murray faced the league's 4th toughest schedule of passing defenses and still finishes the overall QB8 in fantasy. And now, as we've already heard, he now has DeAndre Hopkins on the perimeter, and suddenly there's a weekly present for him with what is likely to be an easier schedule. There's a reason to believe he didn't throw deep last year just because he didn't have the weapons. He had a bottom-dwelling deep ball rate, just over 11%. But with Hopkins now, I would imagine he lets loose. The Cardinals are literally going if you can imagine this, Christian Kirk, Larry Fitzgerald, Trent Sherfield, and Pharaoh Cooper, to Christian Kirk, Larry Fitzgerald, DeAndre Hopkins, and Andy Isabella in the air raid scheme. So overall, it's just a massive win for Kyler Murray.
It is. And I mean, I talked about it so often, but finally we get to see talent around Kyler Murray that is hopefully equal to Kyler Murray. And Ian, you and I just sitting across from each other in the newsroom all season long, I could tell when you were watching Kyler Murray tape from that week. You could tell when I was watching Kyler Murray tape from that week, because there was at least one or two eye-popping plays that he made to elevate the talent around him. I always think back to the Atlanta Falcons game where there's like immediate pressure. He climbs the pocket. He resets himself. He moves to the end of the pocket, then throws downfield. Like these deep shots, the arm that he possesses is like top 5 in the NFL. And I'm so pumped to see what the Cardinals do the rest of the way, namely in the draft, to really set him up for success this year, inside of structure, I might add.
I think this works. I want this to work. Guys, we were saying all these same things about the Browns this time last offseason when they traded for OBJ. And I know everyone's saying Kyler and Hopkins are better than Baker and OBJ. I don't disagree with that. Especially for fantasy purposes, like Kyler, the rushing floor, like he'll be fine fantasy. But this offensive line still needs so much work. And we haven't gone through the draft yet. I really hope they use that number 7 overall pick, I believe it is.
And they're in a perfect spot for that. They're in a perfect spot for that because we've talked about how good the wide receiver group is. The offensive tackle class, I think, is even better at the top. And there are going to be 3 or 4 teams in that top 10 or 13 spots. They're going to want offensive tackles. They're in like a prime location to get one to probably play on the right side because obviously on the left, they re-signed DJ Humphries earlier this offseason.
Yeah, and again, they have time to figure this out. I hope they do. We need to monitor this offensive line so we, meaning me, don't make a ton of ridiculous statements like I did last year about how great everything was going to be for Odell Beckham Jr. and this new offense. I mean, things look great in year one. All I'm saying is an extra year of film of this Kingsbury offense. You know, I want it to work. I think it works, but I'm just hesitant in assuming when we have moving pieces like this, just assuming they're all going to click just year one, no problem.
I just don't think comparing offensive line play to offensive line play is like the correct analysis. Like in this case, it seems like comparing the Browns to the Cardinals is like apples to, I don't know, what's another fruit? Is pomegranate a fruit or a vegetable?
Yeah, the Cardinals O-line was trash.
I guess it's a fruit. No, I mean, it was trash, but remember, Kingsbury in 6 seasons at Texas Tech only had one guy drafted in the NFL all 6 seasons, Raven Clark. Now plays for the Colts, I'm guessing. But through those 6 seasons, he coached the 4th lowest sack rate in all of Division I football. And then last year, they allowed the 7th lowest pressure rate on offense. It's just completely different coaching and scheming from Kingsbury as a whole. So offensive line
literally took a league high 48 sacks.
The 7th lowest pressure rate allowed. So it's just it's a different situation in my mind. And again, like I said, QB8, despite playing 4th toughest schedule. So I don't know.
Ian, have you ever tried to crack open a pomegranate?
I don't even know what a pomegranate is, man. Oh, wait, no, you put them in sangria, right? Those little things.
There you go.
Right,
I would also throw this statement at you, Ian, that Kyler Murray is a more talented player than Baker Mayfield, and I would even say far more talented player. He's just a better football player.
I'm just saying, Baker Mayfield set the rookie record for touchdowns. His splits before and after Hugh were huge. There is every reason to believe that adding Beckham to that offense, having another offseason with at what seemed to be a more stable organization. Like, I'm just saying, everyone was in on the Browns last year, and there was a lot of good reasons to. The one issue is the offensive line, and that, once again, Arizona, everything looks great. I'm in on it, but the one issue is the offensive line.
Yeah, and again, I think a major part of that was even when the offensive line played well and the play callers did well, Baker did not play well. I don't think that there's a real possibility that if Cliff does well and the offensive line does well, that Kyler doesn't do well. I'm more confident in Kyler's ability with that. I'll take it a spin for a winner and close out our statement conversation earlier on the Denver Broncos, because I'm really enjoying what the Broncos are doing this offseason. We mentioned the Melvin Gordon deal, but they've done a lot more than that. They added Jarrell Casey in a late-round pick exchange with the Tennessee Titans, just a 2020 7th-round pick. Casey's been one of the best interior disruptors across the NFL for years and years and years, and that's obviously a piece that this Broncos defense, John Elway, thought they were missing. Graham Glasgow along their offensive line, they franchise tagged Justin Simmons. They had another third-day selection traded for A.J. Boye. They kept Mike Purcell, who's a very good run defender. Dago, I'll throw this at you because I say all those positive things, yet there's a lot of eggs in the basket of Drew Lock right now. Drew Lock has had like very little conversation or speculation or criticism around him as more pieces are added around him. Do you think that's fair? Are you nervous that the Broncos are basically going all in on Drew Lock right now, despite some quality possibilities available in Cam Newton and Andy Dalton and Jameis Winston, so on and so forth?
I mean, he is a quarterback on a rookie deal, so you have no choice really but to build your window for the next 4 years. But whenever he went under center last year, that's why Sutton's breakout suddenly stopped. Like only 61% of the balls he threw towards Sutton were deemed catchable by Pro Football Focus, whereas 74% of Sutton's targets from Joe Flacco were actually deemed catchable, which is a substantial drop-off. We also saw Noah Fant's targets dip. I think it was, I don't have the numbers exactly in front of me. I think it was 2 extra targets per game that he dipped whenever Drew Lock went under center as well. I don't know. Again, it's only a 5-game sample, so it could be much ado about nothing. But nothing I saw last year like leads me to be impressed, right? Like I don't understand why we're suddenly all in.
Ian, what was your read when you watched him last year?
The guy's got swagger, and I love it. I want Drew Lock to be good so bad. But look, the guy, it's like why the Jets couldn't fire Adam Gase. When you start ripping off wins and wins and wins, you got to give him the benefit of the doubt. I understand wins and losses are not a great QB stat. Drew Lock still went 4-1 with his only loss being, in a snowy Kansas City game that, no rookie is going to go into Arrowhead and win under those conditions. His yards per attempt weren't amazing, 64% completion rate when you're not consistently gunning it downfield wasn't great, but there's enough there to, I think, feel good about. The dude's really athletic, has a cannon for an arm, had the highest, time from snap to sack in the league. Like he's good at moving around. He can actually create a little bit off script. I don't know if he's this, world beater talent or anything like that, but we live in a world where Josh Allen was a, ill-timed second half comeback from Deshaun Watson away from going to the divisional round of the playoffs. So they're surrounding with a bunch of pieces. This defense in Denver is going to be sick with Chubb and Bryce Callahan, both back, second year under Fangio in that scheme. So really good defense, adding more talent in the offense. I think Drew Lock is good enough to get this team, at least back to 8-8. Because these last 2 years, like the first time since the 70s or something, that the Broncos weren't able to get a winning season on the board.
Daigle, let's stay positive in these uncertain times. Give us another winner out there.
Ronald Jones is another person that for me went from not winning anything to suddenly like being on draft boards in the first 10 rounds because he had to dodge 3 bullets. And those 3 bullets were basically Melvin Gordon, David Johnson, and Dion Lewis. And he somehow dodged them all and ends up back with the Bucs with Peyton Barber still in free agency. Tampa Bay is rumored to be wanting to bring all of their guys back. So maybe it's possible they bring Peyton Barber back. But as it stands right now, like not only is Ronald Jones the starting running back for a Super Bowl contender 2 weeks into free agency, but Tom Brady referred to him as Ron Jones, which has to mean something.
Already on the Ron basis. Man, I don't know. We'll see how this looks after the draft. Obviously, we can say after all these moves. But just Derry still being there is just screwing with me because we had a whole season's worth of evidence saying that Arians didn't trust Ronald Jones in passing situations. And he did talk him up for a little bit at the end. Really talked him up. Seemed like it was his job. And then he blows one pass blocking assignment and gets yanked off the field for the rest of the game. So no Barber. If they don't draft a running back in the top 4 rounds, I'm with you. Let's sign up for Ronald Jones. But right now, it just still seems like a situation where probably a rookie comes in and then Dari continues to get his targets and it just ends up being another committee mess.
Well, trust is a big word because we heard so often during Tom Brady's time with New England that he has to trust the people around him in order to give them the football. I would say that's probably a reason why they went out and traded for Mohamed Sanu rather than give N'Keal Harry more chances. I mean, you can go back 5, 10, even more years than that and point to when rookies just did not make massive impacts unless their name is Sony Michel and you're basically just handing the ball off to them 7 yards in the backfield and asking them to run forward. So I don't know if he trusts Ronald Jones. I know he called him Ron, but I don't know if he trusts Ronald Jones. I'm scanning the free agent list out there right now to see if like Brady has ever played with or might have respect for any of these running backs out there. It's very thin. It's thin.
Theo Riddick.
Well, I don't know if Theo Riddick's someone anyone can trust. I mean, Lamar Miller's name is out there. Carlos Hyde's name is out there Frank Gore's name is still out there. I mean, they're Devontae Booker. Like, there are players that have had production, obviously, in the NFL so far that, look, we haven't seen Tom's imprint on this Bucs team yet. It is still early in the window, and I bet it happens at some point. And to me, it could be at running back, especially because a pass protection is so crucial to him possibly succeeding in this offense.
If I had to pick, I would guess it's a running back they draft. But at the very least, Ronald Jones is now suddenly in a camp competition, whereas a week ago, I didn't even think that would happen.
And I would just say, like, make sure when they draft, if it's a guy in the top 3 rounds, definitely need to pay attention. But just remember, for every, late round guy out there, there's usually more Darwin Thompsons and Justice Hills that end up kind of sitting behind the guys that have been with the team more often.
All right, I'll shoot my shot here, Daigle. I'll shoot my shot. Corey Clement will go to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
That's a shot.
Because Brady saw him in the Super Bowl. Brady saw him play well with the Philadelphia Eagles. Obviously, he fell out of favor with the Eagles, but you saw his work in the red zone. You saw his work in the passing down. I think Corey Clement's a good fit.
Josh has inside information again. This is like that when he called that
Tyler
Packers
Ervin
running back. Yeah, Tyler freaking Ervin all over.
Rich Rebar does that bit where he tracks what players go with what teams and how they performed previously against them. And Emmanuel Sanders fit that bill as well with the Saints, because when Sanders went with the Niners to the Superdome, he had 150 yards receiving, a touchdown, and threw a 35-yard touchdown pass. So maybe that is the case. And by the way, the good news is I think my internet's done social distancing, so I think we're good moving forward now.
Ian, give us another winner here.
Derrick Henry. I mean, there are a lot of ways this could go wrong if he would have switched teams or if they would have added someone or changed quarterbacks, but we're looking at the same team that just gave him the most rush attempts and led him the most rushing yards and rushing touchdowns. Same play caller, same head coach, same quarterback. It's the Derrick Henry show once again. And now they actually got rid of Deion Lewis, and so far they haven't signed a legitimate scat back to replace him yet. I mean, I understand Derrick Henry, the problem we have with him in fantasy at least is that he is somewhat game script dependent. He's a 50 to 60% snap guy. If the Titans get down early, we're not necessarily going to see him on the field to get yards as we're trying to catch up. He can catch the ball, though, and get yards when he's in open space. He's not Alvin Kamara. He's not Christian McCaffrey. He can't line up in the slot and do some great route running or anything like that. Guys, only Austin Eckler, Kyle Juszczyk, shout out Shanny, Miles Sanders, and Kareem Hunt have averaged more yards per target than Derrick Henry since he entered the league. I mean, I know it's not pretty. He'll let 2 passes bounce off his hands and get 5 yards, but then he goes 70 yards, and there's just something to that big play ability. He's had it throughout his entire football career, and when you get him in open space in the pass game, it opens up an entire new dimension to him. So they lost Conklin. As we talked about in this before, Conklin was a better pass blocker than run blocker, wasn't necessarily the best fit. Re-signed Dennis Kelly. If the O-line can replicate what they did, we have Derrick Henry with the same role as last year, which helped blow up fantasy, except he can actually get more targets. So to me, it's just been a best-case offseason for Derrick Henry from start to finish.
It is definitely a win in the ideal situation, which is why it's going to be even more frustrating when Kari Blasingame takes an 80-yard catch to the house over Derrick Henry.
We talk about defense not translating year to year or being sticky year to year. I wonder if this approach by the Titans is going to do it. And, I mean, you can't blame the Titans from the outside looking in to bring it all back, right? Because it worked tremendously in the second half of last year. But we've just seen this formula not be the type to sustain success for the next 1, 2, 3, or 4 years. Obviously, losing Jack Conklin, who's a fantastic run blocker, is going to be significant. Wouldn't surprise me at all with that late first-round pick if they go there. But, Ian, I mean, this was a team that was one of the more exciting units across the league at points. And I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that more time spent with Ryan Tannehill as a starter means more production for the likes of A.J. Brown and Corey Davis and maybe even Adam Humphries as well.
Like we're yelling regression here because Tannehill was literally the best quarterback in the league on like a yards per attempt basis and plenty of stats when he was out there. I don't think that's going to happen again, but who's to say he can't be a top 12 quarterback in year 2 of the system? And as we saw in the playoffs, if they can help it, they're not even going to put the game in Tannehill's. They're not going to put the game in Tannehill's hands anyway. So, I'm with you.
It all makes sense as to why they can easily experience regression. However, I just want to run it back for a full season because there are so many interesting case studies across this offense, between a second-year OC who found the perfect play caller from play action to Derrick Henry's style of play as well as his athleticism at his size. Like, I just want to see it all for one season. That's it.
Speaking of Derrick Henry, he forced change for who I think is another winner this offseason, and that's the Baltimore Ravens. This is a team who saw Derrick Henry, I think, rush for nearly 200 yards against them in the playoffs. And, when the Ravens were operated by Ozzie Newsome, he was very much a decision maker who cared about building a roster from the inside and out. I think the Ravens kind of went away from that last year with a deal for Marcus Peters, which was fantastic. But they didn't really have any linebackers worth a damn at all. And they've completely changed that this year by trading for Calais Campbell, adding Michael Brockers, who's still one of the better run defenders in the NFL. And then maybe they'll draft a linebacker in the first round with speed to operate behind those big, hulking defensive linemen. I really like when teams have their rookie quarterback in place and can maximize their window to win by filling significant holes. And Ian, I definitely think that Ravens have done that so far this offseason.
Yeah, I think we'll see them continue to do it throughout the early rounds of the draft to try to boost that pass rush, because as unique as the Ravens offense was last season with all the things Lamar Jackson was doing, their defense was also just schematically one of the most unique units in the entire league. I mean, they blitzed on 55% of their opponents' dropbacks. The number 2 team was the Buccaneers at 43%. I mean, they got pressure, but they had to send 5-6 guys per play to do it. Now they've actually added some talent already in defensive line. Hopefully they get some more that can help their already talented secondary not have to be on islands all game and kind of hold up. Hopefully they can hold up with extra safeties behind them, helping them out. So we'll see. Michael Brockers, I'm a little bit nervous about it. Again, we talked about this with Hargrave. Like, whenever a player leaves such a cozy situation with Brockers, I was playing next to Aaron Donald for the last decade. I'm hesitant assuming we're going to get that same caliber play moving forward, but just keep adding bodies to the unit. So.
Even something as simple as bringing Jimmy Smith back on a 1-year deal, like that shores up the entire team, especially with their front seven, as you said, locked in. So yeah, it's crazy to think the Ravens, who were the best regular season team, were winners, but yet again, they're defying the odds.
And not to mention they got a second-round pick for their tight end 3 in Hayden Hurst. They do have to replace Marshall Yanda, who's been one of the best guards in football over the last decade. Maybe they can do that. But yeah, for a team that was already so good, one of the best regular season teams we've seen in quite some time, obviously didn't happen in the playoffs. This team didn't have a lot of needs, and the ones that they had, they basically went out and filled them so far. And I think that's the right way to approach free agency. And then you attack and add playmakers at either spot and either side of the ball. And I think they can do that. Should we get negative here, guys? I know I asked you to figure out some quote losers of the last week. Ian, why don't you go first with one?
Austin Hooper is a loser from a fantasy perspective. Real life perspective, man, good for you. Got that bag. So kudos to the Hooper family and everything. But look, he was already the number 3 option in this Falcons offense. Last season, they got so far behind some games that changed. But before that, he had 77 targets per year, in this kind of Falcons offense that clearly had wide receivers ahead of him. Now he goes to a Browns offense that, yes, like Landry and OBJ are definitively getting more targets than Hooper this year. And we even have some – I'm not convinced that Hooper's necessarily just going to completely pull away from David Njoku. I mean, nobody utilized 3 wide receiver personnel less than Minnesota last season. Now we got Kevin Stefanski running things in Cleveland. I mean, Kyle Rudolph had all the touchdowns last year, but he literally only had 1 more target than Irv Smith on the entire season. Both of them were very involved. And right now we're hearing good things about Njoku. So maybe this changes and Njoku's out of the picture and they really just give Hooper that full-time role. But even if that happens, it's a new quarterback, new scheme, and he's the number 3 option in it. So I thought that whoever was going to pay Hooper this, huge lump sum of money would be doing so to make him the number 1 or number 2 pass game option, which very few tight ends in this league have, and that's not the case. So, yeah, he'll help the offense. The Browns' offense is better with Austin Hooper than without him, but if he's going to be going off the board in fantasy as a top 6 tight end, I'm definitely going to let someone else pick him.
That was my initial thoughts were exactly was, wow, what a great get, and surprising for the Browns sneaking out of nowhere. But then also like, geez, like that's such an awful spot for him to go for fantasy.
Daigle, why don't you give us one of your losers?
Sure, because there have been a lot of opinions about winners and losers in the Texans trade. And it makes sense. David Johnson suddenly steps into the most unaccounted for carries from last season's production. And Will Fuller, the likeliest beneficiary of DeAndre Hopkins' vacated 10 targets and 105 air yards per game. But overall, I think the most likely outcome is that without DeAndre Hopkins, the entire Texans offense loses. And they just get worse vicariously just from being involved. Another way to phrase it, imagine if 34-year-old Darren Fells has a greater than 0% chance of leading your team in receiving. Odds are your offense probably isn't that great. And I would guess Darren Fells probably has a great shot at leading them in receiving touchdowns at the least. So I am very concerned for Deshaun Watson and the offense as a whole, especially because Watson has yet to play a career game in the NFL without Hopkins.
This Randall Cobb contract had to be one of the worst of free agency.
Wow.
I mean,
I forgot that was even a thing. Jeez.
What a spin on losing DeAndre Hopkins because you just don't know how to handle relationships, to then paying a slot receiver who's 29 years old, has already seen the best years of his career in those first 3 to 4 with the Green Bay Packers, to now having cap numbers of $6 million, then $10 million in Randall Cobb in his first 2 years with your team. He doesn't bring anything added that a team can't go and find anywhere else. I understand that Randall Cobb was solid last year with the Dallas Cowboys. Ian, you watched a lot of the Cowboys. How many games did you think that, oh yes, Randall Cobb is the reason why this Cowboys team won this game, or this took him over the edge? Because I would point very, very few.
Cobb was fine. He looked like a fine number 3 wide receiver. Yeah, but why are you giving him that much guaranteed? But as to Daigle's point, Deshaun Watson has never played a game without DeAndre Hopkins. What happens every single year when Will Fuller gets hurt? All of us fantasy analysts, we pull out Deshaun Watson splits with or without Fuller. And without Fuller, they drop off a freaking cliff. What happens when Hopkins isn't there? Like, this could be very, very bad. And from a fantasy perspective, I still see a scenario if Deshaun Watson can play 16 games behind that offensive line, he runs enough, probably enough negative game script for him to, rack up fantasy points, kind of in comeback mode in the second half. But it's not going to be easy. There's a very low floor here. And kind of like Hooper, like, I'm just going to let someone else take Watson at the top of fantasy drafts because there's just so much that could potentially go wrong for the opportunity.
They're going to pick up his 2021 option. They have to pick it up by May. But if an extension doesn't get worked out in the next calendar year, I would imagine it's because Watson is just waiting and filling out the waters because he may just want out. Texans
fans just have to be out for blood.
It has to be furious. Like, I feel awful for them. I really do.
And how about Watson? He tweets out the Drake song lyrics, and they're word for word, like almost talking about his situation in Houston. But then all the Texans fans, he's just talking about song lyrics. It has nothing to do with Bill O'Brien. Come on, people.
And look, I know Bill O'Brien has more power than basically anyone in the league other than maybe, Pete Carroll and Bill Belichick, and that's about it. But if this isn't a playoff team after you went to the playoffs last year, if they only win 5 or 6 games, which I think is in the realm of possibility with how far back we expect this offense to fall off unless something changes. I mean, it doesn't matter how much power you have on the inside if the overwhelming hate from the outside pushes ownership to do something, because you can literally point to one move as the change that altered the face and the outcome of your success in 1 year. And that is a big risk that a decision maker like Bill O'Brien has done, because if it goes poorly, it all can be pointed back to that DeAndre Hopkins deal. Even if it's not the case, it can still be pointed back to that. And that's a thin tightrope to walk.
It was arguably the worst trade in NFL history, but even if you don't even want to talk about the trade and you just go right back to the Randall Cobb deal, just to think that the market didn't even price itself yet for receivers, and then O'Brien comes in out of nowhere and gives Cobb a $27.5 million contract. And when it's completely unnecessary, when there are better receivers still vying for contracts out there, it's been a wild and absurd offseason for Texans. Like I said, I really do feel bad for the fans.
And we're focusing on the offense real quick. We're focusing on the offense here. This was the league's single worst defense in yards allowed per play last season. What was their biggest free agency acquisition? Kicker, Kai Fairbaum, $17 million.
They kept the special teams in place. They did do that.
Go kick your ball and do your thing.
For a team that already didn't have that many playmakers. They eliminated one and haven't added any more outside of that. It doesn't make sense. And look, maybe this is one of those occasions, Ian, you referred to people getting excited about the Browns and the Cardinals, hyping them too much. Maybe we're underselling the Texans here, but that would be difficult for me to believe halfway through the 2020 season.
I will say, we've done this with the Seahawks like the last half decade. So
yeah.
What are they doing? Can Russell Wilson overcome it? He keeps overcoming it. Deshaun Watson is good enough to do that. We'll see if he can.
We are running long here. Ian, why don't you hit us with another loser?
The losers could be whatever awesome rookie running back the Dolphins inevitably end up drafting, because they added Jordan Howard is pretty much, the rookie running back killer at this point in his career. He's going to be Frank Gore, going to play 14 seasons. He's going to have 150 to 200 like league average level carries. And he doesn't catch the ball. But I mean, look, he's convinced already like 3 play callers in his career to give him over 250 carries. And if we include the Philly season, which he was heading in that direction, he had Miles Sanders firmly on the bench, despite some of the openings we saw Sanders have in the passing game. And so, okay, we're gonna have Howard there. So at a minimum, this rookie RB is gonna have backfield competition. And then this was easily the league's worst offensive line last season. So far, they've added Eric Flowers on a big contract, and they added Ted Karras from the Patriots, who was supposed to be their backup center before he got thrust into the starting role in the preseason last year. Now, Cross is fine. Maybe Flowers plays better than he ever has before, but I don't think that's going to take this, again, league worst offensive line to anything above like below average. So when the only good thing this Dolphins offense did last year was let Fitzpatrick chuck the ball up to Devontae Parker. Fitzpatrick was their leading rusher. So I am selling, whether it's J.K. Dobbins, and whoever it is that ends up in Miami, I'm out.
You mentioned Dobbins' name, Ian. I know you're a big Ohio State supporter. And this draft process is going to be so wild for these prospects and for these teams because, I mean, the first time in my lifetime, they won't be visiting these teams. They won't have pro days. There's no connections that are going to be made. So all these like small little details and a level of comfort teams have had with prospects in the past and cite them as reasons why they drafted them, they're not going to have that this year. So that's really going to separate front offices. But the point I was going to make is this. There was like a 3-day period where prospects could basically visit teams before it was all shut down. And J.K. Dobbins made it a point to visit the Dolphins. The Dolphins made it a point to visit or to host J.K. Dobbins. And there's already finger pointing there and connections being made. So that wouldn't be a surprise for me at all.
For as much traction as Jordan Howard has received in fantasy circles the past 4 years, it's kind of weird to think he doesn't turn 26 until November.
Really?
Yeah. He was young coming out of college.
36.
No. He's not even 26 yet.
He was one of those players who also got displaced from UAB. Did you know that? Remember when UAB's program shut down? He was the running back, I believe, with that team, and then went up to Indiana and did very well there.
And he's not bad by any stretch of the imagination.
He's there. He exists.
Yeah, he's not an athlete like
it's
that.
It's like Howard, Hyde, Gore, these guys that they're just going to soak up so many touches. It's just hard to expect anything else.
Timeless ones.
Backfields. Yeah.
All right, John Daigle, close us out here.
All right, a quick one, which I figured was due for regression, but then something happened in free agency that stood out because – if you recall, Oakland traded for Zay Jones at the trade deadline. Yes. Las Vegas. And yes, Zay Jones is still with the Raiders. That took me a while to figure out as well. In week 8. And that actually upped Hunter Renfro's usage to 25 routes per game from over the second half of the season. And in that span, with Hunter Renfro, who was very good his rookie year, suddenly playing an increased role, Darren Waller's targets in the 7 games he played with Renfro in that span dropped to 6 targets per game. So he obviously had targets taken away. But then you have also Foster Moreau coming back for his second season. Recall 7 red zone targets, turned that into 5 touchdowns as a goal line threat. So you also have targets being taken away from Darren Waller in his second year as a starter. And then they added Jason Witten out of nowhere. Still don't understand where that came from, who doesn't have much gas left in the tank in terms of lateral movement, but he did finish with a career-high catch rate last year because that's what he does. He moves the chains. So now I'm just worried that Waller's also going to have relevant snaps taken away, which after a terrific breakout season that yes, coach speak usually lends itself to something, but not an 1,100-yard season, right? Not a breakout tight end his first year as starter. So it's just, I think that he's a big loser in free agency.
Yeah, and they also signed Mr. No Gloves, Nick O'Leary. I mean, there's just so many. I don't know what the Raiders and Bears are doing. It's like they just want as many tight ends as possible. But, yeah, one of the great things about Waller last season was that near every single down role he had. He played 90% of snaps on the entire season. And they already had Foster Moreau, who's, I guess, dealing with some kind of mysterious knee injury right now. We got to get more information on that down the road. But, yeah, suddenly, and every down tight end as the clear-cut number one pass catcher in his offense has way more competition at his position. And also, I mean, Gruden even said before, like, we talked about the Antonio Brown feet problem throughout all last preseason and all that. But Tyrell Williams, like a lot of his early season production, he missed those like 4 or 5 games because of the foot problems. And from what Gruden was saying, like, he was never really back to himself. So a whole lot of scenarios for Darren Waller to easily not finish as number one pass catcher in Oakland, in Las Vegas, excuse me.
Yeah, no, I'm going to make that mistake 1,000 times.
Yeah, I knew I was going to do it.
I just posted another mock draft. I believe I have them taking CD Lamb in the first round. Look, they're in a perfect spot right outside of that. I think that top 10 to take a wide receiver in this draft. It's kind of going back to the Eagles here. It's shocking to see them, other than Nelson Aguilar, not attack that wide receiver position even more. What do you guys think of this Marcus Mariota deal when it came out? Because there is some guaranteed money involved. It's $7.5 million guaranteed. The cap number this year is $7.5 million. Next year, it's $10 million.
He was Mayock's number one. You've said on this podcast before, right?
Yeah, he was. There's some backstory to that because that was obviously the Jameis Winston year, and for the entire process, Mayock had Jameis Winston as the number one overall player, and then something occurred to him where he just didn't trust Jameis the person and flipped it over to Marcus Mariota. I also had Marcus as the number one quarterback that year, for being perfectly honest here. So
wasn't one of Gruden's like main critiques of Carr last season that he was public about was that Carr like didn't scramble, run enough?
Yeah, probably extend plays, like went out of structure.
So I'm not saying Mariota's like awesome at breaking tackles in the pocket and making something happen, but the dude is definitely a better athlete than Carr. So it's a lot of money to give someone just to expect him to back up, for sure.
Yeah, I think that's a good point that you made, and I talked about this on a previous podcast last week, that Marcus has always had the tools, right? He's always had the tools to be that outside of structure monster that you want because he's athletic, he has the arm, but just that confidence, that mentality to make those plays and the chaos he doesn't seem to have. And like the more I do this, the more I realize it is kind of that mindset. But maybe John Gruden thinks he's like the ultimate project to fix, and I wouldn't put that past him either with that. So.
All I know is it's a bad time for Derek Carr to list that house next to John Gruden. A really bad time.
Guys, good job today. We're doing this on the fly.
Man.
You get to see like our apartments and what they look like. Dago, I love the artwork behind you. It's just a blank piece of wall.
My background is
modern
social
art.
distancing. And I'm working on it. Ian knows what I'm trying to do with the background. It's a work in progress right now.
It's coming together for John.
It's coming together.
Yeah, I think these next few weeks, John, like take up painting, finger painting, watercolors.
No, hold on. You can't do watercolors. That's Mina Kimes. Yeah, she's got that market.
That's true.
She's got that market
really good at it too.
You could do something like that, Dago.
I have looked for wrestling art, but no one oil paints wrestling. Go figure.
I mean, I just had this awful image of like like some type of out there artist who puts art like paint on his head and then makes and draws on the canvas with that. Dago, I think you're perfectly set up for that.
Not Jay Dago. Let me know. Give me prices.
All right. That's going to do it for us. Later on this week, I'm going to do a draft podcast. Roto Pat will be on. Mike Renner of PFF will be on, talking about the players that Renner is too high on, that he believes in a little bit too much, ones he could go to bat for. So be on the lookout for that one as well. Guys and girls, stay safe out there. Be conscious of your decisions and how they impact other people now more than ever. I think that needs to be said and reiterated as much as possible. All right, Ian, good to see you. Daigle, good to see you. Chris Anise, good talking with you, producer. And everyone out there, we'll talk to you soon. Still up the villa and stay safe.